Diaz, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome to our interview process. We are glad you're here. As you're probably very well aware, or more than aware, this is probably the most important decision the group of us will make. It's extremely important to us, as you can tell by the amount of time we've taken through this process. It's also extremely important to our 7,000 employees in this district. It's extremely important for the 60,000 students, some of which may not know how important it is, and it's extremely important to our 400,000 people that live in Osceola County. So all that being said, very important to us, taking time. We're glad you're here. Good news for you is we're finally nearing the end of this process. It won't be long. These are very, very exciting times in Osceola County for us as residents. For the school district and for the community. We have a lot of different projects going on here in the school district and in the community. One of which is going on is a high-tech industrial park across the street, which is sensor technology being funded and put together by Osceola County. It's an investment of more than $100 million. It's a game changer for the county. Right now, our two core industries are tourism, followed by agriculture, and this will be a whole new industry for our county, we believe, that will make a big difference to us. The most important part for that, that project's success is public education. We've got to get people and companies to desire to want to move here, to live here, knowing that we will train employees for their businesses. If this project goes as planned, they're talking in the next 20, 30 years of 20,000 jobs overall. So as an education provider, we've got to provide a workforce for that. We've got to have an education system where companies are proud and want to be located near, where the employees that work there at the higher paid jobs want to live here and build their homes here and raise their families here. All those things start to raise our tax base, which lifts the whole county up. So a lot of challenges ahead and a lot of great opportunities for us in the immediate future. Now let me introduce quickly some of the people in the room, some of which you know, I think, from your tour today, but Dana Schaefer and her team from the Community Relations, and they have pulled together everything we've done logistically and done a fabulous job for us. Any questions you have on where you're supposed to be, where we're supposed to be, or when, please go to them. That's what we do, so you might as well too. Our consultants on this project are from the Florida School Board Association, Andrea Messina, who I'm sure you know, Dr. Bill Vogel, and John Reichert behind him. We also have April Jackson, who's president of our OCEA locally, and our attorney, Larry Brown, our school board attorney, who is here to keep us straight and keep us all in line and not do anything we're not supposed to do, which he has done a great job with today. Lastly, the school board members, Jay Wheeler, Kelvin Soto, Tim Weishauer, Ricky Booth, and myself. The format of today's exercise is we've got basically 10 questions that are somewhat canned questions that we're asking all the candidates. We will go through those, each school board member asking one of the questions or two of the questions one at a time. We'll open up by giving you a few minutes to just kind of introduce yourself to us or with any kind of opening comments you'd like to make to us, which will be fine. You'll have 5 minutes to answer your questions. Andrea is our timekeeper.
Loosely.
And we're keeping track of time loosely. It's a little bit of combination of each question. It's also the total. As long as we're kind of running on time and you go 6 minutes on one, we're not going to ring the gong on you or anything else unless you get a little too long-winded. So far that's kind of just worked out nicely and smoothly. We haven't had to deal with that too much. I think you've already done a tour of our community and seen what we have here. I know you don't live far away anyway, but we're always happy to show off what we have. So we're glad you got to come here and see it. Before we get started, do you have any questions for just on logistics or what we're doing or anything else? Or are we ready to kind of get moving?
I'm ready.
Okay. Then we'll go ahead and get started. If you want to take a couple minutes and kind of give us a little introduction of yourself.
Chairman, I'd like to thank
Please do
you
so.
and the board members for allowing me to get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
It has been a process, but it's very important. It's one of the most important decisions that you all will make in your lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that I'm part of that process. So I have a lot to give, and I look forward to today's interview.
Okay. With that, we will go ahead and get started. Mr. Soto will lead us off.
I will.
You know the question?
And now, I keep looking at opening question number 1, and then I gotta go to this one over here. That's all it was. All right, so here, now, just briefly before I ask the question.
Yes.
Do take, it's up to you, but feel free to take some moments to gather your thoughts and, organize your response and even in a, for all the questions. Some are gonna probably require that, some may not.
Thank you. Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, we have plenty of.
Thank you.
And
Yes,
that
sir.
way you could organize your response because, some of the questions are in parts and others are not. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Now that that's out of the way, here's the first question. So, what, in your opinion, is the role of public education in the United States today, and what do you see the future of education to be?
To me, the role of education is to prepare students today for a tomorrow that we don't know of. And despite any challenges that our students come to us with. It's important to recognize that all students don't come to us ready to learn, but not use that as an excuse. I think that the economic impact of not preparing our kids for tomorrow that doesn't exist will affect all of us, the quality of life that we have and that we enjoy, and that their parents want for them. So that's what I believe, that's our role, which has its challenges in itself.
Well, can you talk a little bit about those challenges that you feel are, the public education are facing?
Yes. When I look at Osceola County, I look at the school district that is linguistically diverse. I look at a school district that also, the majority of the students that you serve are on free and reduced lunch. Those factors come into play when you look at student achievement, and it's preparing our teachers to be able to reach those kids, to prepare them for that tomorrow that we don't know about or exist yet. And it's helping both our teachers and our families to understand that although you have all those challenges, if you put the correct systems in place, those students can achieve even more than any of us can imagine.
Okay. Now we'll go next. What strategies would you use to raise the academic achievement of students district-wide, specifically addressing reading achievement at the elementary level? You want me to restate it? Okay.
You're saying what strategies I put in place in order to bring up the reading achievement.
Actually, what strategy would you use to raise academic achievement district-wide and specifically address elementary reading?
Okay. Got it. At the elementary and the early grades, I would use a diagnostic test, which is called MAPS, to see where our students in K1 and 2 are weak, and then create strategies around that to help target those kids before they get into the 3rd grade. I would look at your 3rd grade and base on, for example, last year's MAPS, if they were to take that, and see, okay, where are those students? Because although I don't have FSA scores for those incoming 3rd graders, I'd look at where the weaknesses are, because those students, if they came into third grade week, they'd probably be in your lowest 30%. So you should have interventions in place for those students. It's important when you're looking at reading, although you're doing the interventions, make sure that you're giving students the grade level standards that they need, because you can't always think that just because a child comes to you a little behind, that you have to keep doing those interventions and not give them what they'll need for that grade level test. So those are some strategies. And then looking at 4th and 5th grade, as I walk into classrooms, I look at and I see that sometimes in 4th and 5th grade, teachers they're experts, some of them are in reading, but not in the area of math. And then they dedicate so much time to the reading because they don't feel comfortable with the math. So looking at, do we departmentalize in elementary in the 4th and 5th grade to get them ready? There are teachers that are excellent reading teachers, and there's others that are excellent at math. And your particular question on reading achievement, I would work really with our teachers that are teaching reading on helping them with our students. Also, when you're looking at the other content areas that students, even in elementary, are exposed to, like social studies, it's how do we teach reading through that and still get the content delivered to them. So those are some of the strategies that I would use to increase student achievement as far as reading.
Thank you, ma'am. Doctor, if you would, strategic planning is an important part of the process for us as a school board. It would be for you as superintendent. Would you describe the linkage that you would create between the strategic plan and the budgeting process, and how you would ensure that they're aligned at all times?
In order to get results, everyone needs to be moving in the same direction. And not only as a board and superintendent, but also the school-based people that are the ones that are executing the strategic plan. So it's looking at budgets at the district and at the school. Is the dollars that you're spending, are they going to get us where we want to get as a district? And if not, then that needs to be put aside. And sometimes no is not popular, but if we all decided that this is what's going to get us to high achievement, then we all have to commit to put the dollars to that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Booth?
Get to my question, I haven't memorized it
I
yet.
know.
Dr. Diaz, first, congratulations for being here today.
Thank you.
Describe what you believe to be an ideal working relationship with the school board, and how to achieve and maintain that. And then also maybe talk through an adversarial situation, not a specific one, but how you would deal with an adversarial situation with a school board member, and then ultimately resolve it.
Okay. The work that we do for our families and our students is so important. I mean, if you ran for school board, it's because you felt that you'd make a difference, and that you want to make sure that the kids in your community get the very best education. So as a superintendent, I would look at that is the intent behind whatever inquiry or whatever conversation we're having. I would hope that you all would see me as a member of the team, one of six gentlemen that
You'd be the best looking one.
one of six that has expertise that you bring to the table. You know, all of you have different experiences and come from different parts of the community, and there's a lot of power in that, and a lot of boards don't have that. Education with the publishing, and you with your roots as far as the cattle industry, and then the real estate, and then you with the legal background that I know Mr. Brown would say, we defer to him, and telecommunications, and you've been here in this community for a long time. That's powerful. That's powerful, but it's getting us all together, moving in that direction that we determine together. I would expect that the board tells me what you want me to accomplish. And then when we come to that, is then hold me accountable for the results that together we decided that I needed to accomplish with staff. And it takes time, and time to build a relationship and trust. So I would ask that we would meet bi-weekly, and just to go over things that you may be seeing in the community that need to be addressed. And I'm a person of action. I would immediately put it out to whomever needs to take care of that, because it's important to have that communication between the superintendent and the board. So a situation with a board member that may have been heated. Yes. Okay. Okay.
Not specifically, though. You don't feel like you have to cite some specific example, just
Oh, no.
hypothetically, how would you deal with it?
Okay.
Yeah.
No, but I work with at least 3 board members, and if they're watching, they would know, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay, because we have that relationship. I remember there was an instance that a particular program was being worked on to be put in a school. In my mind, I thought I had communicated the timeline to my board member. But then my board member finds out through other means, because you're in the community, you're finding out, and people talk, right? So the board member finds out. That call was not a pleasant call. But I had to understand that that school belongs, I mean, there's a sense of pride and ownership of your school when you're a board member. And what I learned from that was, in the future, I will make it a point as far as sitting down and talking with a board member, not a phone call, on programs that go in their schools. But I learned from that my board member wanted to know, although they're involved in policy, but they're programs that do impact the constituents in their community. So, communication. Yes.
I thought it was-
Dr. Kelvin.
oh,
No, Jay.
No,
Oh, I'm up,
Or
okay.
Jay, I'm sorry.
You already
How
asked,
could I
okay.
forget you?
Okay, it's okay. It's all good. Dr. Diaz, again, I'm going to echo your congratulations making it this far, because there's 30 some odd who wish they were in that seat, but they're not here. So I'm glad you're here. What do you feel is the single most important piece of data that will drive our district forward? Why? And how do you propose this data be used for district improvement? So I can ask it in parts, or I can, how would you want to do it?
The
in
single
parts?
most,
What is the single most important piece of data that will drive our district forward? Why is that the most important, and why will it drive our district forward? And how do you propose to use this, how do you propose this data be used for district improvement? Tim. Got it?
got it.
Good.
Okay, because, when you're looking at this job, you look at so much data, okay? And it's like, okay, which piece of data I would pull to answer that? And then I remember the conversation of you're trying to bring in people to move into this community and to work, hopefully, at the farm, that's what it's called, across the street, in smart sensors, for those people that don't know what that is all about. So you want to draw high-paying jobs into this community. So what do people that are in the engineering or science background look like for their kids? Well, they look at SAT scores. And how do they compare at the national level? So I would look at our SAT scores, and what will it take in the curriculum to bring those scores up? So I'd look at advanced placement courses, and although you have done a good job in increasing the number of students in advanced placement courses, we can do a better job. And how do we equip our teachers so they can help those students pass those AP courses? So when I'm looking at that single most important piece of data, I also look at how will others that don't know the school system look at the system so they can move in and make this community stronger. So I would use that data, share it with the principals, ask the teachers, what is it that you need in order to help you help our students pass? Is there a different way that we could look at the school day? I just visited St. Cloud, very impressed that
Like
they.
high school or middle school?
High school.
Okay.
They use the pause period. It's an hour-long lunch period where they do interventions when they're not at lunch, 30 minutes. Well, I would look at, and I had a conversation with the principals, what are you doing for those top kids during that period? Well, you could use that half hour to help those kids that have great potential to do very well on SAT, to tutor them or have them on the Khan Academy, which is a partnership with the College Board. They could be online on Khan Academy, which does a diagnosis on them on where they need to go as far as SAT. So it's looking at your schedule, maximizing the schedule to provide kids opportunities for them to do very well on SAT, but at the same time build capacity in your teachers to help kids pass AP courses.
Okay, it's related to this, I gotta just follow up that I hope you understand. Why ACT versus why SAT versus ACT? And I'm not suggesting one's better, but you said ACT and you used that, which is
No,
great.
SAT.
Right, you said SAT, but why SAT versus ACT?
Because although you could use the ACTs for comparable scores, okay, which help a lot of our students that did not pass the FCAT or FSA, what people outside of education wanting to move into this area or any area, we are being judged by our SAT scores. So it has direct impact on the economic growth and the type of jobs that you want to attract to this area. I'm not saying one is better, but that is the reality. The reality of the world we live in is that
Got it.
people want to move into areas that they can buy into the school system that'll prepare their kids for top universities and colleges.
Great, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Silva?
Yes. My second question is, and this question is just, there's no right answer, it's just what you feel mostly about what is the single most important thing a superintendent does. Superintendent does a lot of things. So this one, I would probably recommend you take a few moments to think and organize your thoughts.
I believe the single most important thing a superintendent does is they're the ambassador for what goes on in our classrooms for our kids. The superintendent is someone who goes out and explains to people that are not in education what we do and why we do it and what's the driving force behind it. Because those of us that have been in education for a long time, if we're not careful, we make a lot of assumptions. And we need to see that people that have not been in our schools for 20 years, they still think it's the same school they went to. So you're constantly educating the public on what our schools look like and what they need. So I believe the role of the superintendent is being an ambassador for education.
Thank you.
Describe your involvement with STEAM and career-related opportunities, and link how the STEAM process in the schools are integrating into careers.
Okay. My involvement started with the National Center for Simulation is in Research Park at the University of Central Florida when I was principal of University High School. I helped establish the International Baccalaureate program, but that is liberal arts. But I saw that we had a need for the math and science student that wanted to get into that field. So I was fortunate enough to have the center there. They came and worked with us in order to develop a magnet that focused on global and future technologies. We not only worked with the National Center for Simulation back then, but also Photonics and Creo, who's at Research Park. And we did that because we knew that it would be needed, and this was, 10, 15 years ago? But also teachers needed them to help them, as in the National Center for Simulation, to come help us develop the curriculum to make it relevant for what they needed. So that's years it started with STEM. Later on, as area superintendent of the East Learning Community, I saw that still our schools needed to connect with STEM. And what I did was basically went down to the library in Orlando, and they have a wing in the library that is about technology, and took the principals there and had different principals present to each other, what are you doing at your school for STEM? Some, the robotics club at one school demonstrated for others, because sometimes things are happening in our schools, but our own principals don't know. They don't get an opportunity to showcase what they're doing. And when you bring them together to showcase what they're doing in the area of STEM, they learn from each other, okay? And there's the collegial, competitive, I want to do it better than them, but I can learn from them. And there is connection. I know you have Project Lead the Way in some of your schools, and I saw it also in your K-8. It's important to have that in the middle school that leads into the high school as far as the STEM, because not all of our students will want to go into STEM, the liberal arts, or in career and technical education that will lead to a career in the STEM field, which we have many jobs that are still today vacant because we don't have enough kids going into those fields. But our schools need to be able to produce those students that can choose, do I want a career right now in the next few years with a certificate of industry certification, or can I go on to a community college or a university that specializes in those areas? But it starts in the school with the relationship with the community that has the expertise in the mathematics, science, and engineering field. And there are plenty of them that want to help. It's how do you create those partnerships, okay, and bring them into our schools to help our teachers understand how that mathematics or that science needs to be relevant for our kids, and it takes a partnership.
Thank you. Doctor, as you know, as in all communities, the taxpayers make a significant investment in education and fund everything that we do, and yet at the same time, although we have significant budgets to work with, when you look at the size and scale of them, oftentimes we're limited in our resources we have available. And we couple that then with the inherent responsibility we have to be good stewards of that, those resources that have been entrusted to us. My question for you would be, in light of that, how would you balance the constant challenge that we all face with trying to make sure that we honor and recognize the financial resources that are allocated to us in a budget, with also our vision, our desire to make sure that we're always achieving academic excellence? And how would you reconcile a conflict that may exist between those, if it did arise, between wanting to accomplish this but having resources that won't allow it?
We would tackle that together as a board and look at what our priorities and where within the budget, if this is a priority, then where in the budget can we agree that that may have to wait. Sometimes we have projects that take 5 years, and you're dedicating so much money to it. So does it mean that maybe that implementation of that project, we can have it go out 6 years, so we can use some of that money towards this priority that we are looking at as student achievement? Also, it's always good to go back and look at the things that we're doing now. Do we still need to do them? You know, sometimes you keep piling stuff on a plate and things fall off. Well, can we go back to the plate and see what do we need not to do anymore? So it's a good time to reevaluate what monies we're using in the budget. Do we still need to do that? So we can find money and release it for the things that we find that are important.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Booth?
Dr. Diaz, could you talk to us a little bit about collaborating and cooperating with private entities, community organizations, but also our public entities like city councils, county commissions, also business and professional leaders, but, you know, the community at whole, and maybe a specific time as well that you've done some collaboration and cooperation?
Okay. It's important to always remember our schools are in a community, and how important it is for those communities, for our schools to succeed. Well, with a vision and a strategic plan that is focused on student achievement and having the very best schools, and having a communication plan on how you communicate that to the community and see how they fit in that plan, it's important for you to get out there and share that plan with them. You can't do this work alone. You can't. As a school board, as a school system, this work is too large and complex to do it alone, so you need those community partners. Because guess what? They're the employers of the parents that send their children to our schools. They're the ones that volunteer in our schools. So you have to have that tight-knit communication. And how do we do that? Well, we serve on boards. You know, I always say that it's always good to be at the table when they're talking about you. Okay? Because it's harder to talk about you when you're in front of them, right? So it takes some work, but it's important for the superintendent and staff and even principals, because it's a powerful thing to be a high school principal, because that's a big community. You know, it's use the human capital that you have to carry your message, and your teachers too. So I see there are partnerships that can be formed everywhere. Okay, working with local governments, okay, entities. I can give you an example. We in our community, we're growing by leaps and bounds, and we had a particular situation that we needed to get approval for a piece of property. And there was some resistance. There was some resistance. We needed it because our schools are so large in certain areas that, as you know, if you have a school of 1,800 middle schoolers and you have the same capacity as far as the public areas like cafeteria and media center, it becomes hard. It becomes hard. And the longer the process delayed, the kids continue to come. I was very, I would say, involved in the process of making sure the parents understood and they were educated in the consequences of if we didn't get this. We didn't get this. And parents showed up to the county commission meeting in full force, and it was a long meeting. I think we were there till probably 11:30 at night, and parents spoke. Eventually we did get the approval, but I really believe that you've got to work with your parents, educate them, and they can make things happen for the schools. So it's partnerships and communication.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Diaz, got a very simple question, you can interpret it how you see it.
Okay, I'm gonna, wait, let me, I'm preparing myself, I'm preparing
Shortest
myself.
Okay,
Okay,
you ready?
yes, sir.
How do you set goals?
Okay.
Within whatever context you want to answer it.
Okay. I look at data, different type of data. It could be numbers, it could be interviewing people, but I want to talk about how do I set goals in our work, student achievement, okay? I look at the data and then look at why. What are the root causes of maybe gaps that we're seeing? You know, numbers are one thing, but what's behind the numbers? And you get that by speaking with people and getting the people that own those numbers involved. So it's asking people, why do you think our kids are not doing well in this particular area in, let's say, Algebra 1? Then after we find the barriers and the gaps, then we decide, okay, so we all agree that we have these gaps, what can we do? So that's where you start to set SMART goals. You've got to be, make sure that they're strategically aligned with the district's strategic plan. And you've got to be able to measure them and that we can attain them. When you set goals, you've got to be also aggressive, and I mean aggressive, meaning high levels of student learning goals, not goals that I can just reach and get, but you've got to stretch, and they've got to be time bound. So when I'm looking at goals, I don't only look at district goals, but then by school. And then from school to individual classrooms, and then finally individual students. Because how you move the needle in Osceola is one student at a time, and you can't do it if you just focus on general goals. And then look at what progress monitoring can be put in place to make sure that we're on track in those goals. So what systems are in place that on a regular basis and regular, depending, I'll give you an example at a school. Are we looking at the data weekly, bi-weekly? And what data are we looking at? So, and how, all of those systems put us to meeting the goal. And then if those systems are not working, or those interventions, then we need to get together, principals with teachers, and coming up what interventions can be put in place that work with the particular population or problem that we're having.
I have a question about something you said. You say look at data weekly. Does that mean that you're teaching to what you want to teach to, or that you are giving assessments weekly to measure against? I'm not sure I understand that. You say look at data
Okay,
weekly.
so let's talk weekly. So you teach a lesson, okay? And we've worked together as teachers, okay, that we're going to go through this unit. And you've come up with a formative assessment, which tests the standard that we're trying to teach.
Right.
And that you see that 60% or 70% of your students that week didn't meet it. So it's like you use that data on a weekly basis to reteach. So those kids that didn't meet it can be remediated or taught that. So when I'm saying a weekly basis, is getting to a point where teachers working together on a professional learning community, when they're reviewing the data, that they're looking at it weekly to see where the kids are. So you're basically, you splice the whole progress monitoring process in tinier units so you can see where the kids are. Are they meeting, are they on track to meeting the goal?
I guess that, and boy, I don't mean to, but as long as we're talking about it in that context, so what happens when you've got all these teachers and they're teaching to it, and you've got, say, 5 teachers, and 4 of them have got, 80% plus of the kids getting it, at one, consistently is 70% who aren't getting it, at what point do you realize, well, maybe it's not the content, the teacher just can't teach, that teacher isn't a math teacher, or isn't a reading teacher, I mean, because their kids just aren't, and it's the same demo, we're not talking about a different type of group, we're talking about the same like type of student. So in that context, at what point, when you're looking at that data, do you realize it could be the instructor, not the material?
Well, at the point of that you're looking at the data and kids are failing, well, the teacher needs support. The teacher needs support, and I believe as a principal, it is your responsibility to assist your teachers that may not be able to teach that course or are not
Okay.
at the level that they need to be. You need to rally the troops to assist that teacher, because every day that that teacher's not able to deliver that content is a day that the kids are not getting
Right,
it.
right, right.
Okay? So, and you know what? When teachers have data chats and the four of you and and they're, your kids are meeting at 80% and mine at 20%, the data does talk. Okay, so we need to help her or him, you know, and what are you doing in your classroom? Could I go observe your classroom to see how you deliver it?
Well, you ever come to a conclusion that maybe some teachers just can't teach math, but they're good at reading? You know, not everybody can necessarily be good at everything. And within the framework you presented, I'm just throwing it out. It's just not to suggest that teachers can't be brought up, but there's some people who just, they can't do certain things.
Well, and principals need to work on that while making sure that kids don't fall behind.
Thank you.
You're welcome,
We need to
sir.
get into dialogue. You bring us some very specifics, so I thought it was relevant.
Okay.
That concludes kind of the questions that we've asked everybody, but now what we do is we'll go back through and we'll have follow-up questions or things you said that have queued people up or thought about, so. Mr. Soto?
We're gonna take the 5 minutes, or we're gonna go right through?
We want to go ahead. Okay, we need to go ahead and take a little 5-minute break, let everybody.
Why
Yeah,
not?
that'd be good.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we've been doing.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's a good time to break. Thank you. Thank you.
You're slipping a note, slipping a note.
I didn't mean to get that, but you were giving specific
No,
examples.
you weren't. It's good to push.
Okay, no, it wasn't, I wanted to really just dissect it a little bit.
Sure.
Mr. Soto, if you would like to, you have a follow-up questions?
You've done very well, and you've answered the questions completely in my opinion. So I'm gonna go a little bit off the script here. All right. So, go ahead and just think about this for a moment. What is one thing that that you feel that it's not the board's business, and what a superintendent does? One area where you feel the superintendent's purview.
Jay, can you stand the question?
Can you get it?
Not the board's business.
Right. In other words, you don't need to hear from the board making this decision. What would that be?
That is really off script, right?
I'll say yes, it is.
Yes.
You're the only one who's
Well,
asked that question.
here, to give you a little bit more time and actually to share a little bit. I heard from one of the candidates a term called a non-negotiable. So it got me thinking, there's non-negotiables that the superintendent has with their staff or maybe with their administration. And nothing wrong with that. That's a firm point of belief, maybe a philosophy or maybe something that, maybe it's a reflection of some mandates that we have from the state or from, you know what I mean? But then I'm thinking, well, is there a non-negotiable that we should know about, from as a board? You know what I'm saying?
You see, it's difficult for me to think that there are things in my day-to-day operation of the schools and the school board that it's not their business. It may not be their business to know, for example, how many times we're working with a teacher to get into the weeds of the coaching cycle. But it is their business to know what a coaching cycle looks like. So I can't think of where any question a board member would have on what we're doing would not be appropriate. So I would say that working with you all, there would not be anything that I wouldn't share with you because you need to know. So you may not want to get into the weeds of things, but you would let me know, okay, you get into the weeds, I don't need to know about that. But I think it's important for the transparency piece that it is your business to know. And until you decide that, okay, too much, then you can stop. But I can't think of anything that we do in education, okay, for kids, that it's not the business of the board.
Okay. I'm just curious, you talked early on about the board members you work with, and I'm wondering if you could just give me a little explanation of, I know you're an area superintendent in Orange County, we're not set up that way. When you say 3 board members, are there 3 that are in your district, or just tell me kind of how it works, so
Sure.
I can understand.
There are 3 board members that have schools in the learning community of the East.
Okay.
Okay, so for example, one may have a middle and an elementary school, okay, but have the majority of their schools in another learning community.
Okay.
But when something happens at one of their schools, I'll pick up the phone and speak to the board member, just so they can hear it from me before they hear it from anyone else. So that basically the chain of command is, we notify the superintendent, but immediately we notify that board member.
Okay.
So I work with 3 board members that, in that learning community.
And how many area superintendents are there?
We have 5.
5, okay.
5.
Okay.
My question has to do with culture. It's important to me that we have a positive environment that we all work within. both internal and external. It's very important to this board as well that we create a positive culture in the district. It's been a priority for our superintendent, and it's been something that we've been very effective at creating over the last number of years in Osceola County, so that there's support and buy-in across all levels of the community in the district of the work that we're doing. As coming in and taking over the role of superintendent, how would you make sure that you're continuing that and building from the onset a positive environment, a positive culture, that there would be support and buy-in behind you being here and the work that we're all doing together to make sure that we're moving the needle in the right direction on education?
It's through conversations with people getting to know me as superintendent, and also me getting to know the work that's been done and respect the work that's been done. When you come into a new area and people don't know you, it's important for them to know your heart, know why you're doing what you're doing, what are your intentions, and in that they know the trust. But it's also important for the superintendent to know what were they thinking when they made that decision. Who made that decision? Why? What's behind it? And teachers in general, the majority of our teachers came to this profession because they wanted to make a difference. Our parents sent their best children to our schools. So everyone wants what's best for children. And it's important to have a culture where people have that belief that all children can learn and achieve, but respect the work that's already been done to move the district in that direction.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Diaz, I know we got started a little quick. I'd like to hear from you a little more just about yourself, your
Okay.
path, your
Sure.
your family, and maybe
Sure. I will.
if that's
Sure, no, that's fine. I was gonna go back to that at the end,
Okay.
that's good.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. My grandfather, he was a tomato picker in New Jersey. He came from Puerto Rico, and he left behind a family of 7. Well, when they relocated to New York, 17 children came from that. That's a lot, right? Right.
Well, 2 is a lot.
Yeah, so can you imagine 17 and 3? 17. But looking for a better way of life for his children. My mother married Dad very young. And Mom hadn't finished her high school degree, diploma. And I remember being little and waiting in the car for my mom, when she'd leave her night classes. I grew up in poverty. I had a lot of love, but the support, the academic piece, depended on my teachers and me. And I grew up in New York City and was there till I was 11 when my dad, because of a disability that he developed, we decided to go to Puerto Rico. And I lived in Puerto Rico for 6 years, and I knew nothing of Spanish, although my parents spoke Spanish. But one thing is to hear the conversation, another thing is an academic language, right? And your students have it reverse. They may hear the English, but the academic piece is not there. So I went to school in Puerto Rico and went to the University of Puerto Rico in the region of Bayamón, and then we moved to Tampa. And I'm telling you this piece because I believe that the decisions that were made when I came to the University of South Florida transformed my life. I wanted to be a pediatrician. And I remember in Puerto Rico staying after school with my professor and working on genetics back then, and that was in the Stone Age, the 20th century, like I say. And I wanted to be a physician, but my dad was disabled. So I go to the counselor at the University of South Florida, and I say, I've got the grades. I want to get into the College of Science. And she, in her wisdom, said, you don't want to do that because you would put a lot of stress on your disabled father and mother. And I said, but I have the grades. No, a career in medicine is going to be too much for your family. but here's the College of Education. I didn't have the support. I didn't know who to go to, and when you love your parents, and you don't want to put that. That is what drives me today in making sure the kids understand the choices they have. And it is not for another human being to determine if I get to go to college or the career of my choice. It's for education to prepare them for that. So that drives me, you know, and why I do what I do, and I believe that our kids can achieve. I've got two wonderful young men, adult men, a 33-year-old, he works for SeaWorld San Diego. I've been working with SeaWorld for 11 years, and my wonderful 26-year-old that has taken the longer route of finishing school, and we all have them, okay? And you know what? Young, unconditional love will get them through school and their careers, I will tell you that. And that's Jared. And they're a product of public education, So that's a little bit about me and what drives me.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yes.
You're welcome.
That's good.
You're welcome.
Dr. Diaz, within the confines and context of public education, explain to me when you have encountered somebody who was on staff somewhere within a school district, who was, in your estimation, an inexpert expert, and what should have happened, didn't happen, or what you did do about it, you know, in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. I'll give you an example.
Please.
Let's talk about acquiring a second language, English. Okay. Unless you've done the research, you may have your own expertise that you've developed, in your opinion, that is not based on data. Okay.
You don't need to mention
Names.
the name of someone
Oh,
you
no, no.
determined was incompetent.
Dr. Diaz.
No, sir, because I know
A credential expert who you thought was an expert.
Okay, now you're clarifying.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Yes. Yes, a credential expert.
Who was an expert.
No, I am. It's the same example. It's the same example.
Okay, that makes it easy
Okay?
then.
Yes, because, you know, when you get to a certain level, you've got master's and doctorate degrees, that if they're in education, you will assume, and they assume, that because of the courses they took, they have an expertise in a certain area. So I'll go with how to acquire a second language. It takes years to get a student to get the level of proficiency in English. I've encountered that because of their position and their degrees, that they carry some weight, okay? And when you're sitting around the table and there are 3 or 4 that are looking to that person for the expertise, then you have to come with the data and say, okay, I hear what you're saying, but how are the kids doing in your model? And what you're doing in that class. No. And sometimes, I don't know if this has ever happened, but they get louder, okay? And it seems like the louder a person gets, they think that you will back away because I guess it's the louder I get, I'll intimidate you. But when it comes to kids,
Happens to me all the time.
it does.
That was under such restraint.
Jake can get very loud.
No, I know,
Yeah.
people get loud with me.
Yeah, but it seems, it's, when you know what's right for kids, and you have the data to support it, and not only your data, but researchers that have followed students, for example, that speak another language that's not English and have a large sample size, you know, I have a saying, in God we trust, everyone else brings data. Okay.
Right.
So that's the way you basically confront people on what they're saying when it comes out to what's best for kids. So I've had those
So
opportunities.
you encounter people that are educated beyond their intelligence?
I would not say, I wouldn't pass that judgment, but in particular areas, they may not have that expertise they need.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
That was a great response.
Yes, that was very well
Excellent.
couched. I like that. Mr. Soto, Weissier, Ruth,
No, sir, I'm
any
I
other
do want to ask my ag question.
questions? Go ahead, go ahead.
Ricky.
Yes.
Your ag question.
Actually, and because you're from Orange County, I've been using your county as an example because I know you have a very strong ag and FFA program there. And I was wondering if you might tell us how we might be able to build something like that here in Osceola County. Even kind of goes back to the question, we have this much ambition and this much money. So maybe
Sure.
elaborate on that a little bit.
Remember we talked about partnerships?
Mhm.
I had the privilege of touring with Mrs. Platt,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
community, and she's, what an advocate. What an advocate for education and for the kids. But there are people out there in the agriculture community. They want to partner. Okay, I remember touring a facility out in Apopka where they, I believe it's AgriStarts, where they take a plant and they take the tissue of that plant, and from one plant they can have 100 plants, and they ship them throughout the world. And I asked the owner, do you think we can have a classroom here for our kids? Because we're looking at students with disabilities that need to be in these industries, especially his industry, where one or two employees take care of one greenhouse, but it's all based on technology. And that gentleman allowed us to have a classroom there for students. I always say that people want to help, just ask them. I believe that in this community, with all the resources as far as agriculture and the cattle, I mean, that is science application. The kids need to see that, okay, for a sustainable life, for the people that put the food on the table,
Sure.
there are opportunities for you. So when you talk about STEM, yes, STEM is important, but we've got industries that are the application of that math and science, and they can engage our kids that are sometimes bored in school.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
And
it.
I want to tell you, as a principal, when my students would compete, I would take their hogs to the fair, okay?
Well, if you're at University High School, you had Mr. Dietrich
Yeah, okay.
supporting your program.
Oh my goodness. Anyway,
Yeah.
I've been out there. I mean, they just added sheep, in the last few years, and it's been great. But the days when I was principal, and I would buy the hogs from the kids, I'd go out to the fair. Okay, we want that one, and we'd have a barbecue for our teachers.
There you go.
Oh yes, absolutely support your
Very
kids.
nice. That's
Yes, yes. I mean, you've got,
We
here's
do
the
this
thing.
in Osceola County too.
Yes, we do.
Have you ever heard of a principal
And the
coming and buying
students
one?
cry.
We're working on
The
it now.
students often cry when they sell their
Yeah.
prize
Yeah.
animal.
No, we didn't let them name them because of that. I would go down because
I've seen the girls
it,
cry.
I know they do, but you know what? It's like I would go to where the kids would keep their hogs,
Sure.
and I'd say, how much are they weighing? Okay, how much are they weighing now? And I think it's important. It's important for our schools to reflect their community and take pride, in the industry that's been here. But there's so many opportunities within the agriculture to make it relevant for our kids. Right here, right here. You don't have to go anywhere else. You have it right here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you ever buy another hog, just remember I live off of barbecue.
Yeah.
So please, please
He's
remind
very
me.
picky about his sauce.
It has to be named by some 40 or some
It
60.
does?
Yes.
I'm looking, I gave my card to one of the girls from university on her lamb, because I love lamb too.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, lamb chops, I can make them, they're mean.
Okay, Dr. Diaz, do you have any questions or comments for us that we did not address or did not get to that you'd like to share with us?
Yes.
Okay.
How about if we go through what I would look at district-wide? You talked about elementary, what would you do for reading? But it's important to put a system in place that all schools do. that they're just a basic way. So I'd like to share that with you. Is that okay?
Please.
So that would be like a district-wide plan. It's important to have a well-articulated instructional leadership monitoring plan, because at the end of the day, it's those principals that are in place that are to be held responsible and accountable for what goes on in their schools. And that plan would have everything that we're responsible for monitoring. I'll give you an example, high school, okay? I'd like to, I'll go back, let's do the district-wide. Okay, so do your school improvement plans align with the district's strategic plan? And are the goals in that strategic plan far-reaching? Okay? You need to be able to put them high enough so you can pull the kids up to them. And what are the strong support services that you have in place? What resource teachers do you have that are working with those students that are not achieving? What counselors, with deans? What's your school-wide writing plan? Does your professional development calendar align with the strategic plan and your school improvement plan? Because sometimes we give professional development that does not get us to where we need to go, and then maybe that professional development plan needs to drop off the
I'm sorry,
calendar.
Dr. Diaz, can I ask a question about something you brought? I want to go back to something you just said, okay?
Sure.
So you want to go back to counselors and deans.
Mhm.
Is there a specific ratio that you think that there should be counselors to students at the high school level? Let's have a high school. Is there a specific one, not in a perfect world, but from a budget perspective, that you think is affordable and the district should be doing in Florida or Osceola, or that Orange is and it's working, or that Orange is and it's not working?
Right. I would say that the average, you're looking at 350 to 375, but it's still, that is high. I would say if we can get to 325, and then look at the duties and responsibilities of guidance counselors. Are they doing lunch duty? Are they consumed by testing? I mean, how much of that can be taken off their plate so they can sit with students and work on their college or career plan? That would be
Because
something
I
I'd
agree
look
with you, I
towards.
think counselors need to be doing more, but I think the ratio is much higher than that here, and it's a question of bandwidth. I mean, these people only got 2 arms and 2 legs, so many hours in a day, and just, and one kid who, one girl comes in and says she thinks she's pregnant or something, can all of a sudden eat up half your day out of the blue, so, that's why, because you said it, I wanted to go back to that. I apologize, so please continue with what you're going over.
When you look at their professional development calendar, are you helping your teachers with the standards-based instruction that you expect them to have? And looking at, when I talked about formative assessments, do teachers know, do they feel comfortable with writing assessments that align to the standards that they're teaching? Those are the questions that are part of the progress monitoring. And how do teachers integrate the digital curriculum? Do they feel comfortable with that at your school? And how are you helping them do that? And do they know how to access all the resources that are online that the state has and your school district? Are you meeting while they are sitting with the professional learning communities? I mean, are there outcomes, or is it just a meeting to have a meeting? Professional learning communities, you can have one for data and the other one for lesson planning, but I'd like to see what's the schedule. How do you monitor the lesson plans? Are you giving your teachers feedback? Because it's important to give teachers feedback. And are they on target as far as the scope and sequence? Your eye observation, because I know you do the Marzano teaching framework. How often are you giving actionable feedback for your teachers that is based on your observations? And then tiered intervention schedules. I mean, how are you setting those up? Are kids able to, once they're proficient in that area, can they move out of the intervention, or are they stuck there? That's something I would need to know.
Dr. Diaz, could I
Yes.
interrupt? You mentioned Marzano.
Uh-huh.
Could I ask you what you think a good evaluation or measurement system is?
I think that Marzano has the elements based on research, and we talked about research, it's very important to me, that can move students to the next level. I really believe that because of the mandates of having an evaluation system, something that was meant for growth model has been has left a bad taste on many, because it was like the Fast and Furious, too fast and
Sure.
you know. But it's stepping back and looking at the good parts of the Marzano model, especially the area of lesson plan development and the content that teachers need to use in order for our kids to get the content. So,
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. One thing I've noticed when I walk classrooms is that, you know, the teachers have centers and then you have small classroom instruction. When you're looking at moving kids' achievement, there's nothing like having a teacher in front of them. So it's looking at, when you're having those interventions, how many teachers can you rally around, even if you pay them a little supplement, so they can help you with those kids instead of them being in centers while you have one teacher, having other teachers come join you and run those other smaller groups for them. And then tutoring, okay. Tutoring beyond skills, because I would say to you all that if I'm learning a skill,
Beyond skills, what does that mean?
okay, what that means is, if I'm teaching a standard today and my student doesn't get it, but after school, they're being tutored on a skill that's in isolation, it's hard for a kid to connect where I'm not doing well and on a standard with this skill.
Like, for instance, in geometry, it's isosceles triangles or something like that.
Okay, so that tutoring for that student should be after school or during lunch on that, not an isolated skill, because it's hard for our brain to connect concepts. So you're trying to help a student who's struggling on a standard, but you're tutoring him on something else during the afternoon. So when I work with principals, is how does that tutoring going to help with what standard this kid didn't meet this week? So it's focused tutoring, that's what I call it. And now how are you monitoring? Because we do a lot of tutoring, but very little monitoring of that time spent. Okay, and how am I with time?
You're good.
Okay, and then enrichment. Okay, let's talk about that. And I think I touched that with that earlier. We do, if we're not careful, we seem to only want to pull the bottom up, but not to move the top to the highest level. So just as intense you are with interventions, you need to be very intentional with your enrichment. I believe that you can close the achievement gap through enrichment. If you've walked classroom and gone to an IB classroom and then in the same hall go to an intervention class, you'd be bored out of your socks if you'd have to go to that intervention course compared to the things that the kids that are doing in IB. Why can't a kid that's a level 1 or 2, why can't they be enriched? Maybe that's exactly what they need to hook them into school. So looking at enrichment.
Can you elaborate on that, please? Enrichment, be more specific definition.
Okay, enrichment. Well, when you're looking at teaching a standard, why does it have to be skill or drill? Can you not give that child or a team of them a project where they would be forced in doing research on how to solve that problem and inadvertently learn that skill that you're trying to do in isolation? Some of our kids have been in interventions for years. And then with that, you get the mindset of I can't, because they believe I can't. But if you give them, you approach them from, okay, we've got this project. Let's solve, this pond has pollution in it. Give us some ideas. Go out there and see what resources or what research can help that. Well, kids they'll surprise you. And in that, learn the skills that you're trying to do it. So what I'm saying is, don't only do enrichment for your highest, and I would challenge you to see what kind of enrichment you're doing, but do them school-wide classroom, and individual. And look at your organized activities. You know, many of us have had the privilege of being able to have our kids in sports, right? Sports, after school, performing arts or academic programs, but not all kids participate in that. And kids that are in organized activities tend to do better in school. So then looking at our students and how many of them can we get their parents to understand engaging them in these organized activities are going to help. Because again, some of these kids are the ones in all the interventions. When do they get to do other things? And recognition programs. We need to recognize our kids, our teachers, our staff for the work they do. And communicate always our expectations wherever we go. So that's what I would expect. That's a district-wide for every school. And then you get into the particulars of what you would do as far as strategies. And I can share those with you when we have our meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here today, participating in the process, and your interest in being superintendent of Osceola County. We're glad you're here. We appreciate it. We recognize it's kind of a difficult, time-consuming process, but we thank you for your effort and plugging through it with us. Just to set the expectation, you've probably been told, but we will, at our regular board meeting next Tuesday, we will meet and we will make a decision at that time. And lastly, I'd like to thank Martha Van and Carlos Mendez for hosting and taking people around today. And last but not least, Tanya Culver and Ruben Santa Cruz for recording and bearing with us all day long. Ruben in the back hiding, make sure we're all videoed so people in the community can see what's going on. Thank you both very much. And with that, I believe we are adjourned.
We'll see you at the reception.
Thank you, Dr. Diaz.
Pleasure listening to you.
Very nice.